Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the April edition of Law Chat. And it's my great pleasure to welcome my guest today, Nina Christiansen, all the way from Australia. Good afternoon, Nina.
Hello, Simon. Good afternoon to you as well.
It's great to have you with us, and thank you for coming on Law Chat this month. Law Chat is, of course, brought to you all, the viewers and the listeners, with the support of Moore Markham's Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors specialising in financial services to the legal profession. And today our topic is all about building a personal brand, and it's a word that's probably overused in some context, and Nina is an expert on the area of personal marketing, personal branding. She's a speaker, she's an author, she's a marketing mentor to many with years of experience, and she's just launched a new book called Marketing Me, which, thank you for the invitation, Nina. I tried to get along to Auckland a few weeks ago to the launch, but unfortunately my commitments kept me away. But I gather that was the initial launch of your book. You've got another one coming up in Melbourne, I think on the 23rd of May.
I do, just a couple of weeks away now. Very exciting.
Very good. This is your first book, is that correct?
It is. It's my first published book. So I've written a lot over the years, and it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. And it was definitely a labor of love put over the last year, putting what I wanted to put out into the world as my first published work.
Well, congratulations! It's
Thank you.
it's always I think a great achievement to finally get published. So well done on that. I know there's quite a bit of interest in this topic today, judging by those people who have registered, and those of you who are watching live. If you've got a question that you might like to put to Nina throughout the next 28, 29 minutes or so, feel free just to submit a question there on the Q&A or the chat button at the bottom of your screen. But as I said, we're going to be exploring the idea of building a personal brand. And in a few moments, I'm going to invite you, Nina, just to share with me your thoughts on that as it might apply to lawyers these days. But first, perhaps a few words of introduction for those that may not know of you and might be meeting you for the first time. Tell us a little bit about your life, your background, your journey. Not only are you a speaker, marketing mentor, and author, you're also amazingly a mother of five. So I don't know how you managed to juggle all these balls. But tell us a little bit about your personal brand.
Well, sometimes, Simon, I do wonder myself, and it's very much day by day, a la this morning. Trying to ship those ones off to school. But yes, I have a long history in the marketing space, 30 years now, 20 years as a marketing agency owner, doing a lot in the professional services space and tech space and B2B. And in the later part of that, could really see the marketing landscape shifting around how people were connecting with brands and organizations. And it was so much less about the logo and the website and, you know, the corporate speak, and so much more openness around connecting with the people. And so that kind of began a transition, which started on a shift towards social media and content, but into personal branding, personal positioning for people who are professionals who basically want to evolve to this new way of marketing, which is the way that people are connecting with now. So I transitioned out of running a marketing agency after 20 years, ironically, the year that my agency won some really big awards. But I was very, very passionate about this work, and also taking the principles that a marketing agency was using back then to make them accessible to individuals as well who might not be able to have a marketing agency on retainer. And so through that developed, kind of pulled apart and simplified. And that's where I guess my mum of five expertise comes in. I don't have time for time wasters. I'm cut to the chase. It needs to work. It needs to be effective. It needs to be systematized and doable, and it needs to make sense. And so really using that to extract the bits that are the most important and putting them together into a process. And that's what began about 5 years ago, my Marketing Me methodology, that was then delivered as programs and workshops and speaking and mentorships. So that's where things have evolved. And then I decided to write a book because, not everybody, I don't have the capacity to work with everybody, and not everybody can, but it is a real message of understanding yourself in order to be able to express that with the world, and how to do that simply and effectively. And that was the book. So that's a little bit about me, Simon.
Good, thank you. Great. So let's cut to the chase here. So what is personal branding, and how does it apply to lawyers and law firms?
So personal branding is really there's a saying that Jeff Bezos is often attributed to Jeff Bezos. Whether he actually said it or not is a matter of bit conjecture. But personal branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I like take it a step further and kind of in two directions. In one sense, I say personal branding is actually what gets you in the room. Um, but it's also how people feel about you. So more than what they say, it's about the emotion that's evoked when they encounter you. And so whether that's online, offline, in person, via word of mouth, when someone says your name, it's what do people feel about you? That is your brand. And so everybody has one, whether they like it or not, whether they know it or not. Everybody does have a brand because people do elicit some feeling when they come into contact. And so I guess the discipline and the art and science of personal branding is being able to craft that in a way that's both authentic for it to be effective, but also supporting your strategic and commercial objectives. And I think that's the part that a lot of people are less sure about. I mean, sure, this is me, but how does that align with my work? And that's obviously different if it's someone who's self-employed versus an entrepreneur versus a founder versus a corporate employee versus, a not-for-profit. It's really it can vary the application, but understanding how to use it in any context is really a very, very powerful skill, and one that I believe is probably going to be one of the most useful in the coming decade that we're moving into, because to be able to transfer that skill across positions or businesses or projects is very, very powerful. But at its core, it's about strategically eliciting that really positive feeling that people have when they encounter you and instilling a desire to work with you and want to know more about you.
So is it the same as reputation?
It's different from reputation because you can have a good reputation, but you may not necessarily be strategic about being accessible. And so whereas when you're a personal brand, part of that is thinking about how you want to commercialize that. So how do you want people to be able to engage with you and interact with you? And it's also more about the everyday than just the big things. So it kind of exudes off every single thing you do, rather than when one thinks of reputation, I guess there's a couple of things. One is, large industry players and thought leaders and people who are in the mainstream space. And obviously there's reputation there, but it's more than that, because reputation is something that you have. The personal branding is kind of what goes into that and helps you to create that.
Yeah, you put a posting actually on LinkedIn this morning, which I did enjoy reading it too. It was a bit of a preview for our discussion this afternoon. But I think there you said that part of modern marketing and personal branding is sharing with others what you do, why you do it, and how your work can impact on others. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. That's what I truly believe. And when a lot of people say, I don't know how to do marketing, I'll often do this in my workshops, and I might get them up and ask them a series of questions. I did that at the Altmas Summit. I'm not sure if you were there. I did the keynote on marketing and personal branding there in Melbourne last year, and I literally got somebody out of the audience and said, what do you do? How do you help people? Why is that important? And why can people trust you? And then simply answering those questions at the end of it. And you ask people, now, do you know about this person? And would you be open to working with them? And the majority of the people raised their hands. And I'm like, that's marketing. It's not about, oh, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. It's about strategically communicating what you're about. Now, you don't always have the opportunity to have somebody ask you those 4 questions and get, the answers are answered like that. But big part of personal branding is showing that, not telling, through showing the impact of your work and showing what you do, who you do it for, why you do it, and, demonstrating why people can trust you. And that's more than just the expertise and the proficiency. It's also about, what goes deeper beneath that as a person as well, and injecting a little bit of that humanity in as well.
So I'm thinking for like young lawyers or younger lawyers who want to get established and advance their careers, some of whom are watching and tuning in today. What advice have you got for them who, that in the early stages of their career, they might be still finding out what they're about, what their area of specialty is? Um,
Yeah.
Same advice to them. In other words, get a few scores under your belt, but just get clarity around your why
Mm.
and the success that you've had.
Yes, I would. And I'd also say, so the advice to someone starting out would be a slightly different version of that as well. It's very much about you're not going to have it all together right from the get-go. So please release any expectations that you are going to do this perfectly, because first of all, there is no such thing as perfect. There's just improvement and being more comfortable and more confident. And secondly, you don't know, like I wrote about this in my book. There's a beautiful irony of these two sayings. One is you need to use your voice to find your voice.
Yeah.
And then the other one is you need to find your voice to use your voice. And both are equally true. And if you're waiting until you feel like you have a perfect message and perfect positioning together before you go out and, when I talk about personal branding, it doesn't necessarily need to be, posting on LinkedIn and social media. It could be contributing articles, could be speaking, it could be putting up your hand for things, it could be running events, it could be, getting out and about in your industry. So there's a lot of different things you can do to build your personal branding, but talking about yourself and why you do things and being innately curious about the bits in those conversations that light you up and spark curiosity and elicit passion. And the bits when you're talking to people or when you write something and they reflect back that, oh, that really spoke to them, means that there's an injection of energy and passion into that bit that resonates and that lands. And so then doubling down on that and exploring that. And again, not expecting to have it perfect from the get-go, just going, oh, this is a clue. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper here. Because one, this is the process that you need to go through to find yourself and find your voice. But secondly, even being able to share about yourself is a muscle that needs building. And just starting very, very gently and slowly, but slowly building up the confidence will put you in good stead in the next, 2, 3, 5, 10 years, when it will become very standard part of your business development, practice growth, or firm leadership role, to be able to share and communicate that with others, because it will impact on how people perceive you, not just outside the organization, but inside the organization as well. It's a really underutilized benefit of personal branding people don't realize is it's as much for internal within organizations, for promotions, for getting buy-in and things like that, than it is for external. So if you're just starting out as a professional, accepting there's going to be a learning curve, there's going to be a getting comfortable with it, and just being willing to go on the process. And where possible, if you can, find someone who's going to support you, cheer you, and guide you as you do that. Just it gives you a little bit more extra confidence in doing it, and then you'll see over a period of months and years, it'll become like second nature to you.
It sounds to me that what you've described here, at the very heart of it, it's about being yourself and being very human, and not being a bullshitter. Some people that I've met in my career regard branding as a bit of baloney, and that in fact sometimes we place too much reliance on the veneer, the makeup that we dress ourselves in, rather than what's underneath. And by the sounds of it, you're suggesting that those old perceptions possibly have, we've moved on from those days, and that in fact people are becoming much more real and authentic in the way that they communicate themselves and what it is that they can do for other people. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I would. There's a lot of perceptions, preconceptions, misconceptions around the branding, and I would challenge the notion that people say that like branding is separate to another aspect of the business, like customer service or the business development or sales or customer experience. It really spans across everything. And in the sense that while marketing can be in one sense segmented and isolated, because marketing is really the strategic way of getting our message out and known. Branding is really what creates the desire and what creates that connection that actually make people want to engage with your firm or want to engage with you as a person. And so that it is inherently linked in everything that one does. And the challenge then in our modern environment, especially in our hybrid digitalized environment, is that the experiences that people have are no longer related just to the face-to-face experiences. You cannot possibly have enough coffees. Well, you know, I say this, there's always exceptions, but in most cases, people don't have enough coffees and face-to-face encounters with all the people that they ever need to know about their business, who may then be future customers or referrers or leads for their business. Whereas in our modern environment, like it or not, people are checking you out online, even if you do meet them and have a coffee with them. And what they perceive and what they read and what other people say about you or your firm has in many ways even higher weight than what you say about yourself, especially if they can't be in a physical room with you and experience you and experience that energy. And so there's such a big wide open space to have people share and advocate for you and refer you, even if they haven't been your customers. And that's where branding and being strategic about that side of marketing and content comes into play, because, you know, that's just the world that we're living in now.
So yes, you answered the question I was going to put to you, and that was really basically how the digital age has actually transformed personal branding or the need for it. And I guess as part of that, a social media platform like LinkedIn is critical for legal professionals if they're looking to build their personal brand and reputation. Would you agree?
I would not quite say critical. I'd say very useful.
Yes.
But there are some people that have a complete aversion to being on social media, and I think that's okay. I've had clients that just don't want to be on social media, and there are plenty of other things that you can do that aren't social media. But I think what's important to understand is social media is definitely a shortcut. So you can share on LinkedIn and have your brand and your message and your face in front of hundreds of people very quickly and very regularly. If you don't want to be on social media, that's okay. But it's important then to not do nothing. Think about how else you're going to engage with people. So whether that's going to be through emails or through events or through contributing articles or collaborations or interviews like this. Like, this is not on social media. I happen to be on social media, but if I wasn't on social media, turning up and doing an interview like this would still, put me in front of other people. So there's a lot of things that you can do, even if you don't like being on LinkedIn per se. And obviously what makes sense is going to depend on your personal situation and if you're an employee versus if you're a solo practitioner and things like that. But it is very useful, but it's not the be all and end all, let's say it that way. I like to, and I talk about this in my book, I talk about 3 ways that you ideally want to be positioned and get 3 ways to get eyeballs in our modern digital environment. The first one is to be visible, which is basically pushing your message out, which is and you're in control of that. So that would be things like LinkedIn or email or, running your own event or something like that, where you dictate the terms almost and you create the environment and you bring people in. The second, so that's being visible. The second is being findable. And that's about, things like, where are you in the places where people are looking? Are you in industry journals? Are you searchable on Google? Are you on YouTube? Are you on Pinterest? All the places where people might look. Directories, industry associations, things like that. And the third one, and that's basically can be a little bit more work up front if someone's looking to build a brand, but those things can pay dividends over the years because the compound interest of time and building that digital footprint can really work for you over the long term, and there's less effort in sustaining that. So when you're visible and you're putting out stuff on social, that's more effort. When it stops, kind of when you stop, it stops, whereas the be findable is there. And then the third one is probably, I have alluded to this already, where there's the most leverage for sure at the moment, and that's to be shareable. And if you can be visible, be findable, and be shareable, so that's basically getting in front of other people's audiences. It's being referred by people, and not just customers, like I said, advocates, people who are fans of your content, people who like what you have to say, people who will invite you to come and speak at their event, people who will share your quotes and material to their audience. And so if you're shareable, then there's a higher weighting on those eyeballs, so to speak. And so all three, ideally, I talk about, and it doesn't need to be long, doesn't need to be too complex. I talk about, ideally, if you're a personal brand, you shouldn't be spending more than an hour a week to build your personal brand, because otherwise it's just simply not sustainable. I can tell you that from experience, many years of doing it and thousands of people doing it. You can have the grandest, loftiest plans. You ain't going to follow through if it's too complicated. So we need to really make it very simple and accessible. But if we can have something that fits within that hour a week, that's systematized, repeatable, that will ideally contribute towards being visible, so a little bit of proactivity, being findable, being there for the long term, but also shareable, and the trust factor and connection factor is huge in that, then that's a really, really good place to start.
So a lot of individual initiatives there, and it's I suppose the definition is personal brand, so it's very much about you. But I just wonder sometimes how you reconcile that in a law firm, where a law firm is trying to build a team culture, and there may be a team brand. So, for any team leaders or practice group leaders who might be tuning into this at some stage, what advice would you say to those team leaders about building a personal brand in sync with what the firm or the practice group is trying to build?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question, Simon. It's such a good and such an important question. And again, also such an underutilized one, because when people are, and the key really is to encourage and empower your people to be able to really, at its simplest form, share about the impact of the work they do and what matters to them. That makes it far less scary as go and build a personal brand. That sounds daunting. But if you encourage them and give them the resources, whether that's the guidance or the support or the encouragement or the skills, the tools, the mentorship, and it doesn't need to be complicated, could be just as much as an encouragement to, hey, you've been working on this. This is really great. How could we help you to share it? Or what do you think you could do to share it about that? That's, from a commercial perspective, really, really smart, because it elevates the person, feels like their voice matters and their contribution matters, and they feel a sense of significance and being valued within the organization. But it's also hugely valuable for the organization because, the person who's sharing about the project that they did and the impact of what that is, and obviously, not going into client details or anything confidentiality, it could be just anonymized, or could be just a snippet of a human story or something like that. But there's a benefit to the firm because people get to see the work of the firm in action, and that has so much more impact than the corporate speak newsletter listing out the services and the focus areas and the, you know, all of that side, than the human stories. That's actually going to make people want to think, oh, that person helped that person, maybe they can help me. And I would go a step further, and rather than, like, there's two, I talk about when we talk about what to share as a personal brand, I like to draw two circles, a Venn diagram. And on the one side is self-expression, which is things that matter to us, because we all have an innate desire to be creative, we have passions to share about things that matter to us, whether they're, you know, causes or values or passions that we have, you know, sport or family or whatever it is. That's just, it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, an accountant, a technology person, you are also creative and you have an innate desire to express that. So your people do as well. And so on the other side of the Venn diagram is strategic, which is what could be shared that is strategic, that's going to make commercial impact to this role or to that person's role, to their KPIs, to the firm. And at the intersection between those two, what's strategic and what's self-expressed is a beautiful pool of content that comes easily, naturally, and resonates with people because it's authentic and it's legitimate. They're not trying to pull stuff from left field that feels awkward and stilted. It's very powerful, but it's very aligned with their role and the type of clients they want to attract, or what they want to achieve, or how the firm wants to be positioned. And so empowering people to be able to be ambassadors for their firm and share freely is hugely, hugely powerful.
Interesting. Of course, it's central to all of this, we're talking legal professionals and lawyers, is the notion of, can I trust you? And one of the questions that's come in from one of the attendees today, how do you think you communicate you are trustworthy in your brand building activities?
I think the number one thing is show, don't tell. And, you know, people say we are, you know, we trustworthy, or people trust us since X number of years. And it was like, oh, did you know, did they not trust you before that? Or, you know, it's like if someone says trust me, that raises a red flag. So what you want to do is certainly show, if possible, customer stories. And I think, like, in the past, we would have said testimonials and things like that. And I think they're still good, but people actually want to see things in action. And so in your personal branding, I would say talking about injecting snippets of credibility in there without being braggy or big noting yourself, because I think a lot of, especially Australians and New Zealanders, have a reluctance to talk up their achievements. So rather than going out saying, oh, I did all these things, you're talking about something, but injecting things like, when I was part of XYZ organization, or when we were brought into this project, or when I was working on this, or when I spoke at that event, or when, you know, some, you know, celebrity, you know, approached me to work with them, or when I graduated, you know, top of my class, or whatever it was. It's like, the thing is not about that, but you subtly infuse things that give credibility to your message. And when you do that over and over again, but in moderation, like, it's just like, you know, 15 to 20%. The rest is really a lot about the connection piece, but it's got to be reinforced by that credibility and authority. Then that builds trust. And I know we're out of time, and so I won't launch into it, but if we had more time, I would love to talk about, you know, in the having the intention behind what you're sharing, and the energetic connection with people is actually what people feel even more than the kind of the professional credentials and things like that. And you know, I blog a lot about it, so it's on my website, it's in my book. But having, like, this, there's the external credibility, but then there's how do people feel about you? Does this gel? Does it feel right? You know, people's BS detectors are very finely attuned. And so if you're in integrity, if your message is congruent with what you actually do, then you'll go a long way to having the trust factor, which is unspeakable, is there as well. So that's a really short explanation, but they're the two things that together are the, you know, beautiful combination for building trust quickly and reliably.
That's a great answer. Look, thank you. And thank you for the question, whoever sent that through.
Yes, thank you. I love that.
There you go. Look, thank you so much for joining us on Law Chat today. If people want to get hold of you, Nina, what's the website?
Yeah, sure. They can find me at ninachristian.com. Super easy. All the different ways to read my stuff and I've got some like a marketing insights report, which is often useful for professional service people, giving them practical insights for how the marketing landscape is changing and how they can adapt to that. There's my book. I speak a lot online as well. So I'm on all the socials, LinkedIn, and so feel free to reach out to me. I'm very approachable if you've watched this, and just send me a message and say, hey, that'd be great. And if you've got a question, I'm more than happy to answer that as well.
That's terrific. I look forward very much to receiving a copy of your book. I know one's on the way to me to add to the shelf with all the others behind me here. So I very much look forward to delving into that. But for now, let me just say, Nina, thank you very much for joining us on Law Chat. And I look forward to staying in touch with you. Until
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Simon.
Yeah, all the best. I'll be back with another edition of Law Chat next month, which will be, God willing, coming to you from Italy. So those of you in Australasia who might normally tune in this time of day will probably have to watch the recording because it'll be done the very early hours in the morning. But my guest then next will be the author of this book that I'm pointing at, Beyond the Billable Hour. Ditch the Billable Hour by Sean Jardine. It's going to be a very interesting chat. I look forward to talking to him then all about value pricing in the legal services sector. So for now, that's it for April Law Chat. We'll see you next month. Nina, take care. All the best to you. Till next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.